What's poppin', Atlanta? It's your girl Abbie Knights checking in for the Hype magazine, and today we'll be taking another left turn with talented NASCAR vet Dion Rocko Williams. What's going on, Dion? How you doing today?
Feeling great, feeling good. If I was any better, I'd be you.
Right. Yeah, you don't want to be me. Ladies and gentlemen, Dion Rocco Williams. I feel like you're a superstar. I'm like, come on now. You just see the energy. He's just always smiling, always in a good mood, always polite.
Well,
So,
we're talking racing. You start talking NASCAR, it just puts a smile on my face.
yeah, sometimes I feel like it looks like so much fun, but I don't know that I'd want to be like one of those people on the dash cam, that's going along for the ride, feeling like they're about to have a heart attack. I don't know. It looks cool from the outside looking in, though.
I will say TV doesn't do it justice. When you see it in person, it blows your mind because it just looks like cars making left-hand turns. Like, what's the big deal? But when you see how close they are, you hear that engine roar, feel it and smell it, it just provides a different perspective.
Yeah. Well, I know for me, it was my first time being at an actual NASCAR event recently when I met you. And I couldn't believe how fast they were going by. I mean, they look fast on TV, but I didn't think that they were going by. It's different when you see it in person, like you were saying. It's night and day.
And and then you can do Atlanta Motor Speedway as well. They just dumped a ton of cash into that track, basically evolved that racetrack into a type of race that we've never seen before. They basically took a super speedway track, which is typically a 2.5 mile track. They have very high speeds and condensed it into a mile and a half track, which is why you saw what you saw in Atlanta with those high speed, that spectacle that was there. That was a big victory for Atlanta and NASCAR, to pull that off because that was something that has never been done before. That type of race, to add the bank into that racetrack to provide that type of show that they provided there, which is why you felt what you felt there.
Wow, that's amazing. Yeah, it's anybody out there, if you're thinking about checking out NASCAR, you have to go and at least catch one race in person. I promise you, it's a whole newfound respect. I couldn't believe how quick, like, I wish I could change my spare tire with that quickness, okay? Like, you might find me there 2 or 3 hours later, still trying to figure it out. So I'm so excited to be chatting with you today. I thought it'd be kind of cool to, kind of let everybody know, when did you develop your interest in motorsports? I mean, like, was it always a dream as a kid? Did you just want to be a NASCAR driver, or how'd that start for you?
No. Well, it was just right place at the right time, and avoidance of real work is how I like to explain that as an athlete my whole life. I was playing college football at Wake Forest University. From Atlanta, Georgia. Football, you're just born and bred that stick and ball sports are what's in you. Motorsport, isn't really radar growing up in Georgia, east side of Atlanta like us, for the simple fact that nobody looked like us back then growing up. Nobody raced that looked like us. Pit crew didn't look like us. We didn't. Our parents wasn't watching it. What we were watching were the stick and ball sports, the NBA, the NFL. So that's what we resonated towards. But so no, your question, not a fan. And how that became is just for the simple fact that when you chase that stick and ball dream, statistically, athletes like myself, we wind up short. Either practice squad, average 3 years in the NFL, whatever, and then you're back to using your degree, getting a real job, or chasing a semi-pro team. So, fact of the matter, of NASCAR experiment back in 2004, perfect time. for me where they were looking to improve their pit stops, implement athletes in these positions who are used to handling pressure, taking care of their body, performing at a high level, and see how that would change the choreography and the speed of the pit stops. And it changed the game to the point where it was an experiment back then. Well, now it's everybody and anybody who knows that you can be a professional athlete in motorsports. The word is out on pit crew athletes, as well as just the buzz and the likability uh, of NASCAR and motorsports now. So that's pretty refreshing to see, being that this is my 18th year, and I may not look like it, but I'm an old head in the game. So I've seen a lot of changes in the sport. It's refreshing and it's exciting to be a part of.
You say 18 years. I look at you, I'm like, what are you, like 25? Like 18
You,
years?
well, that
What?
honey brown caramel delight don't crack. We got that Blasian blood. So I consider that my Asian half and my black side. You can't go wrong with that.
I'm saying, listen, I want to look like you when I grow up because I'm like, what? 18 years? Unbelievable. But it's
You
so,
do, Abby. What are you talking
me,
about?
no, not at all. Give me another 10 years and I'm gonna be looking real different, I'm sure. But you never know.
We
You got to
all are.
take care of take care of yourself and your skin and all that. But it is really surprising. I know we've talked about this before, to see a lot of, well, what was unexpected, at least for me going in. We were talking about having that representation,
Yeah.
being more eclectic, and showing and representing different backgrounds, different ethnicities, but people of all races are capable of doing jobs incredibly well. So for me, it blew my mind to hear that this was a newer thing for the sport, considering that it originated in 1948. So, to think that you'd go all these years and it's literally just now happening, like really within the last like decade and a half or so, it's kind of mind blowing. But before we get into that, I did want to take it back a little bit more and find out, what was your childhood dream?
Honestly, my childhood dream was I wanted to be a pilot.
Uh
I
huh.
really wasn't into sports.
A
Sports for
pilot?
me was just a way to stay out of the house. I grew up with a lot of women, strong black women in my family, so it was a way for me to stay out of trouble by staying busy and not coming home, So once I realized that, hey, I was actually good at that, around 10th, 11th grade, and I go to school for free, that's when I really focused in on it. But my dream was to become a pilot, and then that was ended. That ended when I realized you had to have perfect vision, and with contacts and eyeglasses, for me, that wasn't going to be a realistic dream as a pilot. But that's what I wanted to do. At the end of the day, I always wanted to have a job where it didn't feel like work, and
Mm.
not trying to look for that. I'm glad that that happened. It feels like I haven't really had a job for 18 years. I've always been either a professional athlete as a pit crew tire carrier, or, in some capacity talking about this sport that I've been a part of.
So from racing in the skies to racing in the track. I mean, it makes sense. It makes sense a little bit. I mean, I feel like if you did become a pilot, you would have been like one of those people that just is there to put on a show. Be like,
Oh, you
no,
would have
come,
heard
I'll
me
take
on
you
the
on a ride.
speaker.
What? Be taking people on backflips in there. They'd be coming down so sick. Like, don't get on this thing with this guy. But that, because I already know, like, I don't know you that well, but I feel like you're definitely a prankster and you'd have too good of a time with that. So,
Yeah,
nothing
thanks.
better than being the person totally in control, watching somebody else freaking out in a scenario like that. So, okay, we talked about you being in the NFL to
Well, we're
NASCAR.
not going to say the NFL. That was more of a high and a buy. I showed
Okay.
up, and then I was gone. It was three preseason games. You're not drafted. You're a free agent trying to make the team. So it's a
Hmm.
little different route than
Okay.
the glorious, prestigious, get drafted type of route that a lot of those guys go.
Okay, but you did play most of your life, I'm assuming, right? You played high
Yes.
school, played college.
Yep.
So, for most people listening to you, they probably think like two completely different career paths. for anybody that might be kind of curious about NASCAR, maybe people that just love speed and love to drive in general, that
Hmm.
feel like, oh, there's not people that look like me that aren't in this, for you, what was your state of mind when you made that transition from, sports or whatever your initial dream was to being in a completely, a lot of people don't realize NASCAR is considered a sport. Even though you're
Yeah.
not running and throwing a ball or anything like that, it's still a sport. So what was going through your mind when you decided to make that transition?
Well, Abby, to tell you the truth, I didn't know it was a sport when I joined it either. Like I said, it was one of those things where I was avoiding real work. And it
Mm-hmm.
just sounded interesting. I went to a school where I was used to being the extreme majority. I was born overseas in Germany, used to being in situations where you're different and you go a different, I should say. So with NASCAR, when I met Coach Phil, who currently is the director of athletic development for Rev Racing, he was the one who initially had the idea to bring athletes into the game. And luckily, our paths crossed at the right time. Where when he pitched it to me, he was simple and frank. He was like, "Hey, you fit this body type. You have the demeanor that I'm looking for. What if I need you to practice just to put this tire on?" And I didn't know anything about it. But once I got to the race team and I saw their facilities, I saw the money that was involved, and then when I saw the competition that I was going against, and at that time when I was coming in, I'm 23 in my prime physically, and I'm seeing older white men smoking cigarettes, not really working out, but they're getting paid hundreds of thousands of dollars to do something that they deem athletic. I looked at it as a lick. Like this was an opportunity to really shine because one, I got the ultimate cheat code, being that I am athletic. I'm straight out of uh, this physical sports game. And my mentality was still young minded, where I approached it the same way I approached football. I took it serious. I practiced hard, and they fast tracked me so fast because they were just so impressed, not only with me, but the group that we brought in and what we were able to do physically. It just created a lot of opportunities for us to shine. And just like football, when you get that opportunity, you just take a hold of it and draw attention as you can. That's what I did, to the point where, next thing went to Chip Ganassi, then it went to Kyle Petty, then it went to Hendrick Motorsports. Next thing you know, I'm the first black man ever putting on a uniform for Hendrick Motorsports, changing tires for Jeff Gordon, Mark Martin, Chase Elliott, winning in the Cup Series. And you didn't look at it like you were doing anything special until you got with a driver like Jeff Gordon and you saw the impact it had on others who didn't know about the sport prior. Because when you weren't attached to drivers and a team with greatness, you really didn't get a lot of attention anyways. But that's when I noticed the biggest difference, when I saw, like, man, this is really something here, point where minorities and demographics like myself who really find a bond to the sport are really missing out. And you see that now that the emergence of Michael Jordan getting involved, Pitbull, like John Coleman with New York Race, and you're starting to see a shift, not only in the way it is viewed, but who is attending and how it is received. And at the end of the day, this sport is a very competitive and should be. I mean, there's a lot of parallels between stick and ball sport. When you come to a race or you really view it, you'll see that pretty easily.
Well, there's a lot of danger and a lot of precision in what you guys do. But what you guys do requires, it's dangerous, it requires a lot of precision. It's not as simple as it looks. Obviously everyone's very skilled, highly trained, and that's what makes it look so easy. But before I ask you the next question, I did want to touch a little bit on how swagged out you used to be. Let's talk about, you know,
You know,
wearing your uniform with pride. We talk a little bit about that. Like, what inspired
that
that?
that was important to me for the simple fact, one of the first things that I noticed when I was at the racetrack, not only the fact was I different, I was the only black man around, but the fact of I dressed different. What I felt like looked good didn't look good, in a mechanical word to say. It was more of a grunge. Hey, the dirtier you are, the harder worker you are. But more on the lines of, we're performing on television. 4 hours on TV, representing millions of dollars in sponsorship. I wanted to look the best that I could, perform the best that I could, and look the best that I could. I'm straight from the Dion Sanders area. Look good, feel good, play good, paid good. And one of the best things that I did was always took pride in the way I worked and the way I looked. And doing racetrack, when you're wearing a Kellogg uniform with Tony the Tiger on it, you wanted your shoes to match the same color. You wanted your belt to be the same. You know, when it hour before the racetrack, you didn't have any friends no more. It was game time. You put your headphones on, which was unheard of at that time. Something as simple as, if you watch any stick and ball, football game, basketball game, pregame, play with headphones, they get in the mindset. That was unheard of when I came to pit crew. When I came in the pit crew, it was buddies and mechanics to talk in. But then when the race started, they going to war against each other as friends. I did that. It was put your headphones on. I'm not your friend. We're competing. Brought that stick and ball type of mentality. So things like that, I'm really prideful when I go to the track now and I see that everybody has headphones now. Everybody's coordinated. Everybody's trying to look good. Know that they're being filmed. They know that the cameras are there. They know that they're representing teams out there. It's good to see the athletes take pride in the fact that they're professional athletes now and that they're doing a skill that not too many people in the world can do. It's easy to say you can change a tire you can change 4 tires in under 13 seconds. Well, they're doing it in under 9 seconds now. I mean, that's rare. You can honestly say nobody in the world can do what these athletes can do in a competitive setting that is NASCAR.
And on top of that, dealing with the cars that are coming right behind you too, trying to get out
Human
of the way.
Frogger, Abbie. Human Frogger. Just try to dodge cars running across to the 405 or something like that. That's basically what you're doing. Take 30 miles mile per hour off of it. But at the same time, it's a little bit eerie, and that's why football players adapt to this. We're used to putting our bodies in situations. That could get us. We're used to putting our bodies in danger and ignoring it just to make the play. So doing that as a tire carrier and a linebacker, that I had an advantage over others. I had that kill, I had that pick things up, put things down mentality, get it done. Where the tire changer, I might look at a running back, a wide receiver, somebody a little more cerebral, good hand-eye coordination. They can get down from their knees and up real quick. And if I was a jackman, I'd look at a D tackle or a D defensive end who was tall but still speedy, who can run around that car, lead that jack, has those long arms. So your body type is very important to what type of position you would have as a pit crew member as well. And that's plays a large role in how you recruit, where you place these athletes once they get into the sport. It's one thing that I have been able to obtain is a relationship with all major teams on the circuit. Not to mention that I was doing this at a high level for a long time, to the point where when an athlete comes from me to another team, they know they're certified and they've been put through the necessary ringer validation.
Oh, I can only imagine what it's got to be like for rookies coming in with you, because I'm sure you give them a couple little extra curveballs too. So you've been around for quite some time now, like you said, nearly 2 decades now. So in the span of your career, I know that's crazy to think back on that, right?
I know. Dating me. Feel old.
You look like you're like 20 something, so I mean, you're good so far. Just give it another 20 years and we'll revisit the conversation, right?
Yeah, facts.
So for you, obviously NASCAR is filled with so many obstacles along the way, right? It's a lot of savvy, a lot of quick learning, a lot of innovation, because every year I'm sure there's new techniques, new forms, new ways of doing everything. For you, what was the most challenging moment in your entire career that taught you the greatest lesson so far?
Failing and making big mistakes, social mistakes, blending it in, is what I like to call it, a traveling circus. Just as stick and ball sports are, where it's a network, it's a clique, it's the same group of people every single week from February to November. It's a grueling schedule to the point where you're on the road a lot. One of the biggest mistakes I made was not respecting the difference in culture and people being exposed to certain things. And there were mistakes made because there wasn't a template laid out in front. There wasn't a blueprint on how to do that. So one of the most things I'm proud of is not making the same mistakes twice, repeated mistakes to the point where when you learn different things of how to maneuver, how to navigate in this traveling circus that I call NASCAR, you embrace it and you don't lose who you are as a person, but you do respect what it is that it takes to put on this show week after week. And that's one of the things I'm most proud of is the having the ability to code switch and blend in to the point where it allowed me to receive a lot of the opportunities that I have received. You know, the sport of NASCAR is not one that, well, positions on the pit crew are not ones where you can just apply in person. It's one of those where it's been a long time that's been passed down through generations, through uncles, through cousins, through brothers, sons, and which is why demographics like myself are unfamiliar with this sport because no one passed it down to us. So one of the most things I'm proud of is not only assimilating into that network, but also is exposing it to my children as well, and my family and my network to the point where they're able to embrace it and get it at an earlier age and early experience in their life where I was a little bit later, maybe because of the simple fact that no one exposed it to me.
And that's crazy to think about it that way because it really is all about who you know. In a sport like this, I mean, let's talk about over the last, what, couple decades. There's been a lack of representation for people of color. And even though there's been a lot of evolution in the past decade or so, what's your opinion on the lack of representation along the way, even up to today?
I don't think there is a lack of representation when you look at the bigger scale of it. If you look at the population as, let's just look at black people in the number scheme of things, they represent under 20% of the population as a whole anyway. So even
Yeah.
if you had every single black person do thing, they would still be a minority. So I never expect to see a large number of representation in something where you're the minority at from the start. What I do like is the fact that I've seen it increase uh, almost exponentially from 2005 to 2021. Perfect example, Atlanta Motor Speedway, where you visited, looked totally different to 2005 compared to when you came to the race, Abby. And it's been refreshing to see because of the fact that that old mindset, that stale, you know, uh, mindset, is dying. The people are getting older, they're phasing out. And if they're not passing that around to the kids, then it dies with them. And I think you're seeing a resurgence of a more youthful, open-minded attitude towards not only NASCAR, but life in general to the point where, we're able to reap the benefits from that as a whole, as a sport.
That's incredible. I mean, I think change is good. And I mean, innovation, change, it's the times that we're living in. I feel like half of the world is still living like 50 years behind when it comes to some things. But I definitely wanted to kind of get your perspective on what it was like working with Hendrick Motors and Jeff Gordon and get an idea of what's been the biggest highlight for you in your career so far. Because I'm sure you've had a lot of great moments, but there has to be something that sticks out. That when you look back, you're like, oh, yeah, that moment was, I'd relive it again a million times if I could.
See, I appreciate you asking that because one, my memory sucks. So I don't remember a lot unless I'm around people who are there
It's
with me or
honest.
unless I'm asked about it. So,
Uh
so
huh.
you know, as it relates to Hendrick Motorsports, that was the best race team I've ever worked for in my life. Let me just tell you a story. I never knew how to change my oil. Like that's the type of race fan I was. I didn't even know where the dipstick was located. You know, grew up in Atlanta. We just went to Pep Boy. Didn't worry about that. Not to mention I grew up in a house full of women. Strong. We didn't learn about that stuff. So the fact of the matter was, my first 6 years as a tire pit crew member, I was pit crew athletic only, no mechanical skill whatsoever. And I did realize that over time that did become a block for me. That when mechanical issues occurred at the pit stop, I had to be subbed out, and somebody had to sub in for me. I took that personal time because time off of the track, you're losing money. If you got to get subbed in and you can't do the task performed, how can you call yourself the best? Long story short, you pay attention to your weaknesses. And one of the things that Hendrick provided for me was a full-time opportunity as a mechanic, post-race teardown mechanic. And that opened my eyes to a whole world, which is the wrench turning game, where you have dudes who spend their whole life turning wrenches, watching their fathers, uh, working on these race cars, and they can come right out of high school, 16, 17 years old, work for a race team, travel the country, making six figures their whole life, being knew how to turn riches. I didn't know that occupation existed. I didn't know that was a thing. I didn't know that was possible. Long story short, when I arrived at Hendrick Motorsports, they knew I had a college degree. They knew I was spongy and I could soak in information. They allowed me to come on full time as a mechanic, learn these cars. And for those 3 years, I learned how to tear these cars apart, somewhat put them back together, but it made me a more valuable crew member as well. So when you're in that position, changing tires for a driver like Mark Martin, Jeff Gordon, Chase Aliya, and you know that you have the tools necessary to make sure that they're in position to win the race, it makes you feel better and it makes you feel proud as well that you're able to accomplish something that you didn't think you were able to do. And that was, you know, these race cars. Because after you do that, you realize how simple everything is when you pay attention, take notes, and focus in on what you want to do. And, there's a lot of stories like that in the sport, and a lot of stories that are recruits and athletes who came down similar paths like mine, they can attest to as well. Just for the simple fact of being exposed and that they did not know about prior, and they saw the opportunities there.
Beautiful. Nothing better than a good challenging moment to help you grow, huh? Especially when you're competitive, you're like, oh, nah. What you're
And
not
then
about
let
to
me
do is keep subbing me in, right? Like, I'm going to find a way to get better at this.
let me tell you this too, Abby. Like when you're growing up, you're not a race fan. You know who Jeff Gordon is. You
Hmm.
know who Daryl Earnhardt Jr. is as well too. So it wasn't even. I didn't even realize that I was competing against those drivers at the time when I
Hmm.
was pitting. That's how out of touch with the sport I was, how much of a non-fan I was, to the
Hmm.
fact that, okay, my first team, Chip Ganassi Racing, my driver was Sterling Martin. Yes, he's a GOAT in his own right as well known. The full cycle, well known. I was totally oblivious to who Sterling Marlin was at that time when I was coming in football. Totally oblivious to how prestigious it was to be on one of those cars and how long the regular mechanics and the guys who didn't come through the path that I came through had to wait to get on one of those cars. It takes guys 3 and 4 years to get on one of the premier series cars. I was fast tracked after 3 months for the simple fact that I was athletic and I looked different, to the point where when you actually perform a little bit better, it validates that you're not just here because you look different, you're here because you're damn good. So
Hmm.
at the same time, when you're able to do that with a driver that has a chance to win every single week, that's how you validate yourself as an athlete in motorsports, because it's easy to shine when there's no eyes on you. But when you're with a driver like Jeff Gordon, watching his pit stop every single time, and every mistake is magnified because Jeff Gordon had a chance to win the race every single time.
Hmm.
So, as an athlete, that's what you're appreciative for, not so much of what you were able to accomplish, but being paired up with someone that allowed you to showcase that.
Gives making every second count a whole new meaning, huh?
And
No pressure, guys. No
remember,
pressure.
we live in tenths of a second, not a second, tenths of a second matter to us.
Yeah, see, I'd be like a dinosaur. They'd be like, just put her in the back somewhere with like a tricycle and she'll be good. um, so you've recently joined New York Racing and you are putting together a new team. It's obviously it's a newer team for those that aren't familiar with it. So can you help fill in everybody what New York Racing represents, what you guys are about, and what the journey's been like so far, getting a new crew together? Because even though it's young, right, it doesn't mean that it's not ready to hit the road hard. So we're trying to find out what's ahead for New York Racing.
New York Racing Team, owned John Cohen out of New York Racing. I met John Cohen, the owner, back in 2009 um, at a NASCAR track. It was either Atlanta or Dover. And at the same time, just seeing a man, John Cohen stature, at that time, he was a lot larger before he started working out, lost about 100 pounds. He looked like a New York version of Suge Knight. So when you see somebody like that at the racetrack, I immediately introduce myself. Be like, "What's up, bro? You lost? How you doing?" I think I said "sir" at the time. But he was all fit and fresh. They didn't look like your regular team owner. I was like, "What are you doing here?" To the fact, I found out at that time when I met him, he was actually old racing, had a black driver, and was trying to make a name for himself as a team owner in the sport. And I befriended him immediately. At that time, I was pitting as a tire carrier for Jeff Gordon and uh, Hendrick Motorsports. So always linked up and loved the idea of having black ownership in racing. And we had that at the time with Brad Doherty, but Brad Doherty, to me, seemed like someone who grew up in racing. He was a motorsports fan. He knew of it. He grew up doing it. He didn't really relate to me in regard. Then when Michael Jordan entered with Pitbull, I got so excited for the fact that it was going to be a bridge to the mainstream pop culture, and we were going to lose that
Mm.
good old boy stigma that was attached to NASCAR. So then comes John with New York Racing Team, and he's doing it solely on his own. As a black owner, he hired me to manage his team, and we employed black mechanics, black management. And even though we're understaffed in a small team, the fact that we lean on our experience and our relationships in this sport to make it races. The proudest moment I had thus far this year was being a part of the New York Racing Team, being able to see Grambling State University on NASCAR race car in the Cup Series at the Daytona 500. And 18 years in this sport, I would never see HBCUs in NASCAR. I even thought that they would have any interest in this sport of motorsport, which has changed. Crazy, but at the fact of the matter is to make the Daytona 500 with HBCU represented on your car, that just it was a culmination to all the hard work, all the grind that we've been doing with a smaller team to make these races, which is a challenge in itself to pull that off. Yeah, that's New York, New York Racing Team, New York Racing Team. The little engine that could, the little black engine that could. I would like to look at it. For the fact of the matter is, we lean on our experience not only as a race team, but with our driver and Greg Biffle. A past Cup Series winner to the point where he knows how to help a team like us make sure we take care of our equipment, we get through these races so we can make it to the next race. At the end of the day, a victory for us is winning. I mean, not winning. A victory for us is running as many races as we can this year to showcase we have that ability to run a full year in the years coming. And at the end of the day, that would be a ultimate dream, full time established Cup team, black owned, black managed, uh, non race fan, general manager that loves this sport like any other thing. And to help a team reach that goal would be full circle. Almost. almost a full circle experience from where I came in to
Hmm.
how I'm involved now in capacity.
What do you think is the team's greatest asset at this point? Because I'm sure there's always a lot of doubts initially. You're building a team, you're growing together. You have an extremely talented team that you're putting together because, like you said, they're all handpicked. So, what do you think, even though you're growing together, just like any other sport, it takes a little bit to build that chemistry, that dynamic, to know that you're just a well oiled machine. What do you think is you guys' greatest asset in this moment?
Our greatest asset is in our owner, John, being able to have this dream and this desire. I've never seen an owner that looks like him, that lives the lifestyle that he lives, that is true a motorsports fan, like a student of the game, to the fact that he knows facts, he knows stats, and the fact that he came in early, leaves, comes back, always sticks around, all bettering every time he shows up is our biggest asset to the fact that you have real life experience in this sport, as well as myself, to the point where I've worked with every team sport capacity, competed against them. We've made great relationships, and the mechanics, the teammates that we have with our team, this is all they've ever done. 10, 15-year veterans. They started when I started. We're all in. We all be successful. This is a team that wants to race full time and knows how to get that done and how serious and challenging it can be. So that's our biggest strength, with the fact that we have the experience to not only have that, but to make it happen.
I'm excited for you guys. Because it's more, it's not just a team. You guys are like a family. And
Oh
that
yeah.
just hits different, when you win together, and it's a different, it's a different feeling when you win with, people that feel like a family versus just punching a clock when you show up every
Now
day.
it's extremely hard to win in the Cup Series, Abby.
Mm-hmm.
You will have athletes and mechanics and car chiefs and drivers go 10, 15 years, 20-year careers, never win a Cup race. You can win in a lower series, but I didn't win my first Cup race until 6, 7 years in, to the point where it is extremely rare to win at the Premier Series. You have to have everything link up right. You have to be paired with the right team, the right driver. So, yes, winning is the ultimate goal,
Mm-hmm.
but a successful race team for us isn't necessarily winning. A successful race team for us is showing up, making the race, finishing in the top 20, finishing on the lead lap, and to the point where we get our second car, we get our third car, we get more research and development, we get more engineers, and then you can start raising your expectations up a little bit more. But right now, showing up, we're doing thickening our notebook each week, figuring out what we need to do better, what we need as opposed to what we don't need. That's real life experiences that nobody's going to hand you that sheet or that template or that guidebook. You have to
Mm-hmm.
get out there. You have to show up to these races. You have to look bad sometimes to look bad the next week. And that's one of the biggest things I'm proud of, is the fact that we're in a position to learn on a weekly basis to figure out how we need to look when we show up the right way.
The right way. That comes with experience, right? Knowledge is
Oh yeah.
everything. So being able to be kind of ahead of the curve before you get there and anticipate certain things, knowing that it's going to take time, knowing that the goal isn't all about the trophy, I think it speaks volumes to who you guys are as individuals, but who you are as a team as well. So that's really, really cool. Um, for everybody out there, if you are a NASCAR fan and you do know who Dion is, he's a man of many talents. You're not just doing what you do, behind the wheel with the tires, all that, but you're also doing a little hosting on MRN, if I'm not mistaken. What's that
Oh
been
yeah.
like for you these past few years?
Oh yeah. I've always lived my life on the camera. Even when I was pitting uh, as an athlete over the wall, I recorded everything. It was just a natural transition to broadcast and to tell the story pit stops the right way. You know, one of the biggest things that aggravated me, Abby, was when I saw drivers, I saw guys who actually didn't go over the wall try to talk about what it is that we do and how we do it. And a lot of gets lost in translation. That was my biggest motivator to even get involved in broadcasting, is to talk it right about what we do. Because at the end of the day, most people show up to the race and they look forward to the pit stops. So the broadcasting came as a way for me to fact check a lot of stuff that was saying about us during. It aggravated me so much to the point where I would create my own podcast, correcting or maybe reiterating how it should have been, talked about, and that created a lot of interest and created what it is now at the Pit Stall Selection Show. It airs on NASCAR.com every Wednesday, usually airs around noon. And we break down why the drivers pick where they pick on pit road and the different characteristics and the personalities of the racetrack that a lot of the casual fan maybe not know. So it's been a huge success in that regards. And, anytime we have an opportunity to get in front of the camera to talk NASCAR pit stops, to talk any diversity or anything on why this sport is so cool, I don't shy away from. I look at any opportunity for that because that's how we build numbers in this thing.
Right. I mean, do you feel though that being in front of the camera is any less pressure than when you're actually working in a race?
I never really looked at it like that. I don't feel like it's any less or more pressure. I've always been one to really handle pressure the same. I just didn't like to fail, and especially when the camera was on. But it's not one of those things I've never really feared. It's one of the things you just kind of do. And luckily for me, it always resonated well when I was on camera, and people always received it well. The peers always thought I was, representing the sport in a way that was well received. So, I've never had any doubt whatsoever to keep doing it.
Definitely a total natural.
We know the facts too. And when you're confident in
Yeah.
what you're able to do, and it just feels good. If you're talking football and stats and you're a broadcaster talking football, you're competing with all the other football broadcasters that came before you. The cool thing about NASCAR, what we're doing in NASCAR, we don't have a lot of NASCAR broadcasters talking pit stops, and we damn sure don't have a lot looking like me that have seen what I've seen or experienced what I've seen. So I'm kind of in my own little lane right now. So that provides a lot of confidence too, that I don't have a lot of competition.
Which is amazing. You're creating a whole new lane, so to speak, right?
I say that now. All
Yeah.
these dudes, my athletes I'm recruiting, they'll be ended up in my competition soon.
You're like, hold
Replacing the
on, wait
old
a
man.
minute. Right. I love it though. It sounds like you've had such an incredible journey so far. I mean, so many great takeaways, so many great lessons learned. What's ahead for you guys? Well, for you personally and for New York racing in 2022. What can the fans expect?
For me personally, I want to build on the 60 athletes. The 60 athletes. For me personally, I want to build on the 60 athletes we have personally brought into the sport, touched and made motorsport athletes. $2.5 million in salary they are personally responsible for. Dudes and females that we've never even that we had to convince motorsports was an opportunity for them. They believed in us. They turned this into a career. I want to add to that number as it relates to my broadcasting career. Eventually, you're going to see me up there calling the race. I will be calling the race on a major broadcasting event at some point in some time when they break to the pit stops. It will be explained the way it should be explained. And as far as New York racing team, you will see New York racing team as a full-time Cup Series team with full partnership and back competing with the big dogs at one point. That would be the ultimate goal, to get this place uh, to a point where they can compete on a weekly basis to compete for a top 10, top 5, or a victory.
That sounds so exciting. I can't wait. So that means these next 5 years are about to be unforgettable.
We're
But
gonna get a lot of racing in. I'm gonna have to drag you to a few more of these racetracks too.
oh,
You
I'll
know,
be
you got to
there.
go to a super speedway and you have to go to a short track since you've been to an intermediate already.
Yeah, that way I can have a good way of well, I guess you could say good level of comparison between the three. Since I don't know much
Absolutely.
about the sport, I'll definitely be able to hit the ground running with that, right?
Well,
You
you
know,
stick with me, you're gonna know something. You're gonna learn something today.
learn me something today, huh? I meant to ask you too. Has there ever been a female pit crew member? That is
Oh
the one thing
yes.
I did not see was really a lot of females when I
Well,
was out there.
you didn't see any females on Sunday. Well, maybe you just overlooked her, but Brianna Daniels and Brianna O'Leary and Delando Uendo are three black females who are tire changers in this sport who we
Impressive.
brought it. Brianna Daniels played point guard at Norfolk State. Brianna O'Leary played softball at Alcorn State, and Delanda Oyuendo soccer at the University of Miami. And they are all tire changers in the sport in the Xfinity Series and Truck Series and part time in the Cup Series. You know, with our women tire changers, they have to be able to hit a switch where I think our female athletes have, where they forget that they're a woman. And for them to manage those tires and pull those tires the way they do and run around with the pit guns like they do, truly three remarkable athletes right there. Very proud of what they're doing this.
That's impressive because I was watching that and I can handle some weight, but the way that they move is like I mean, it's really for anybody that is interested in the sport. You really do have to go and experience it in person. They say that a lot about baseball games and certain sports. You really have to be able to have that in person experience to really understand why it's so exciting
And
firsthand.
that might be possible as well with the racetracks. That one of my other hustles, one of my other responsibilities as NASCAR Drive for Diversity Pit Crew Development National Recruiter. So that's a mouthful, but that's the title.
I
As
love
National
it.
Recruiter for Diversity Pit Crew Development. Let me say it one more time. National Recruiter for NASCAR Drive for Diversity Pit Crew Development. We travel to, let's say we go to a Texas race and we're in Dallas. I'll go to the University of Texas. I'll go to local schools in Dallas. I'll connect with the coaches there, administrators there, the athletic directors there, and I'll present these opportunities to NASCAR to them to allow me the opportunity to recruit their athletes. And that's where I've obtained a lot of our athletes through uh, synergies presented by racing in these different cities with the schools that are in the area. So we've been very successful at that. Pretty much every campus that I've gone to and been allowed to tell my story, we've been able to snag a couple of athletes from those schools at some point in our partnership, and it's been very, very, very rewarding experience, especially because we're out here changing lives. We're exposing careers to individuals who don't know these careers exist, and that's one of the most fulfilling things is the fact that I was one of those individuals as well. I didn't know NASCAR existed. It was just the fact that you know, road travel by worked for me.
That's so exciting, though. To know that you can come in, you can affect somebody else's life in such a positive way and introduce them to something, a whole new career that probably never crossed their mind in a million years.
It
And
keeps it less like work.
yeah. Exactly.
And at the end of the day, that's the goal, avoiding real. I've done it for 18 years.
Well, what exactly, I mean, for people out there that don't understand, can you help them understand what is real work?
Real work,
Ladies and
I'm
gentlemen, nine to
avoiding real
fives.
work. Real work is work that you don't like doing. I've
Yeah.
never, I've never went to the race shop. I've never showed up to the racetrack. I've never walked into the buildings of this team dreading what was ahead of me. So that's real work. what I'm doing now is considered work, not real work. Real work
Yeah.
is what I avoid.
Yeah, look, when you get to wake up every day and genuinely love what you do, life just feels different. It feels different.
Facts.
And I feel like that's the best way to live. It's the only way to live. You know, regardless of what your job is, if you love doing it, then that's the way to go. High five.
Hmm.
Yes. That was great.
Deal.
It's been a pleasure speaking with you. I'm so excited for what's to come for you, New York racing, just the sport as a whole. You know, seeing how far it's come from where it began is really exciting. And I can't wait to catch up with you soon and find out what other incredible things you're doing.
Absolutely. Remember, anybody listening to this interview, give NASCAR a chance. Watch it, research it, embrace it, because it truly is America's best kept secret, especially for minorities like myself, because it's just not on our radar yet.
Just not on the radar yet. I like it.